Please welcome to the stage Sophia Carson of UNICEF USA and our esteemed panel.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm Sophia Carson, a proud UNICEF USA ambassador, and I've had the distinct privilege of working with my UNICEF family over the last 6 years now to help amplify the voices of the youth of the world, to advocate relentlessly for an equitable world for every child. Today, we are here to celebrate the undeniable power of a voice. UNICEF is deeply committed to upholding and fiercely protecting the rights of children in every corner of the world, and that includes ensuring that there is a place for them at the table. It includes ensuring that their voices are not only amplified, they are protected, but most of all, heard. As a UNICEF ambassador, I have dedicated my voice to the protection and education of young women, so that education is not only a privilege for young girls, but an inalienable right. And in 2019, I was honored to have my first field trip with UNICEF, where I was able to bear witness to the life-saving power of an education. I held, I embraced, and I was frankly forever changed by these young women who, in their beautiful words, expressed to me how an education, how UNICEF not only changed their lives, but saved their lives. These girls are the future of tomorrow. They are our leaders, and their lives and their stories are proof that there is nothing quite like the force of an educated woman, proof of the undeniable force of a voice. And speaking of powerful voices, I am so happy to introduce today's leaders, our change makers who have dedicated their very young lives to changing our world. So let's meet our panelists. First of all, Ion, so nice to meet you. Ion is a student at Vanderbilt University, a longtime advocate for migrant and refugee rights, and a UNICEF National Youth Council member. Ashley, welcome, looking beautiful in pink, leads the HEY campaign, which is a health and environment-friendly youth campaign, working with young people across the Caribbean to foster sustainable lifestyles and understand the impacts of climate change. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you, Sophie.
And lastly, Kyle, a student at Yale University, and a UNICEF National Youth Council member with a passion for mental health advocacy. Welcome, and most of all, thank you. Thank you for your work, for being an inspiration for myself and for all of us here, and we're so looking forward to hearing more about your advocacy. So, let's begin. My first question, which just fell to the floor, would you help me with that? Thank you, is for Ashley. I'd love to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit more about your activism, how you got started, and what inspired you?
Well, thank you for that, Sophia. Hi, everyone. So before I get into it, I just want to say something. Society doesn't determine your destiny. You determine where you want to go, who you want to become, and the avenue in which you need to pivot. And you'll understand why I began with that. I was born and raised, and I'm currently living in a community which is deemed ghetto. And young persons, including myself, are often stigmatized based upon the environment in which we live in. But I believe that the environment in which we live in doesn't determine our destiny, that it is up to us where we need to go and how we want to get there. So my advocacy began at the age of 16, and it was predominantly centered on non-communicable diseases, and I formed the Schools Against Non-Communicable Diseases in Barbados. In my home, 1 out of 3 children are either obese or overweight. So I embarked on this journey to bring the necessary awareness to our schools population about the impact these dreaded non-communicable diseases are having on their lives. At the time, Sophia, I was also a medical student, and I understood that the health of our people is also linked to the health of our environment. And that led me to start the Healthy and Environmentally Friendly Youth, which looks at the impact that climate change is having on people's mental health and also their physical health. And I remember when I first started it, we only had a network of over 21 ambassadors. And through my foundation, the Ashley Foundation, which focuses on social development issues, up to this year, we have a network of over 100 young persons from all across the world. And thank you. And what was most inspiring for me as an activist was that we're often hearing the conversation of climate finance and how us as young persons needs more support within our projects. And we launched, with the support of my partners through my foundation, the Hey Global Climate Fund, which really looked at reimagining and redefining climate finance in an intergenerational context. And that was concluded at least 2 weeks ago. And you know, as a youth activist and advocating for other young persons, I was so amazed because we got over 1,400 applications from young persons all across the world. And it really showed us and my partners that young persons have the ideas and have the solutions and just need the support behind their projects. So within everything that I do, I advocate for the most vulnerable, which includes our young persons, youth living with disabilities, especially those young persons living in stigmatized and marginalized communities, because they are the voice of the future, and we definitely need everyone on board, especially when it comes to tackling social development issues that affects us.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you're doing. Kyle, why do you think it is so vital for young people to have a voice and, most importantly, a seat at the table?
All right, starting off with an easy question. I like it.
Yeah.
So, 3 reasons really come to mind when you ask that question. First, I would start with, these are all problems that are affecting our generation just as much as they're affecting any other generation, right? Everything from economic instability to food insecurity are affecting the youth of the world just as much as they're affecting like I said, every other generation. So we have a stake in the solution to these problems just as much as anyone else does.
Correct.
The second reason is that every generation grew up in a different context. And because we all grew up in different contexts, we have different ways that we approach solutions, right? Different tools come online when we're tasked with solving something, and we have different heuristics. Kind of when I say that, I'm reminded of an interaction I had with my mom like a week ago. A month ago, where we were driving to a convention center that was like an hour away. We both didn't know where we were going. And I got in the car and pulled out Google Maps, and she pulled out, I kid you not, 4 pages that she had printed out from MapQuest.com.
No.
And like, I was blown away that she had like gone to MapQuest.com for something like this. But I tell that story because I think it illustrates really well that, you know, when presented with the same problem, we just have different things different approaches to the same solution. And we ended up getting there, but I think
through Google Maps or through the map?
through MapQuest. But you know, we had these different approaches, and I think when we're talking about these huge problems like climate change, we need as many different perspectives in the room as possible. And the most important reason that we need a youth voice at the table is because we're the ones who are inheriting the future.
Correct.
Yeah, we're the ones who are going to be implementing these solutions and are going to have to be dealing with the world that comes after these solutions are implemented.
Correct.
So we need to be the ones who are also shaping these solutions.
Absolutely. And Ayan and Kyle, this question is for both of you. I know that both of you are part of the National Youth Council for UNICEF. So how does your work with them support or intersect your activism?
Yeah, thank you once again for having me here. I think that's a really good question, specifically with the National Youth Council. You know, you get introduced to a space that is all about child rights. You know, you have other youth that are your age or even older that have been interacting with the activism space for such a long time. It really elevates the advocacy that you're doing at a personal level. And I think that UNICEF does something very unique in the way that it goes to the district level. It goes to high schools and universities across the nation and, you know, encourages them to advocate and speak for youth issues. And what I'm referencing is the clubs program. You know, you can be at any high school and go to the UNICEF website, and there will be a way for you to create a club at that school. And I think that's really powerful, something that I believe other people in the public sector and even the private sector should look to look at the community level and see how we can elevate people's advocacy, not just, you know, in high schools and colleges, but just youth abroad generally.
Beautiful response.
Yeah, and
Want to take it?
I would say I wouldn't be a quarter of the advocate that I am if it weren't for
The people that
Yeah.
you surround yourself with.
Right.
and UNICEF kind of giving me the opportunity and giving me the resources to develop into someone who's able to get on a stage like this and speak on behalf of other youth.
To give you the platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, UNICEF. I know mental health is a big part of the conversation these days, luckily, and I get asked this often, so I wanted to ask you guys, and especially Ashley, how do you protect your mental health while also advocating for others?
Well, Sophia, the truth is protecting my mental health is often hard, especially when you're advocating on behalf of others. But I have a motto in which I heard my dad, when I was growing up, he always used to say, let no obstacle be greater than the cause. And
Wow.
I live by that motto each and every single day. And for me, that's one of my positive affirmations. So even when I'm having a bad day, I go back to the last word, which is cause. And my cause is to fight for those children to ensure that their rights are protected. And to be honest, every day where where I want to go, when it comes to my mental health, I couldn't have a good mental health if it wasn't for the support of my family and friends. And I think that that is what is key when it comes to supporting young persons, to ensure that us as young persons have a support system, to ensure that, at times the road ahead or the journey may seem like a long one, but once you have a good support system and you know that there are many persons out there, whether they're naysayers, but once you have those positive persons within your circle, it always benefits your mental health at the end of the day.
That's beautiful. May the cause always be greater.
Than
Then?
yourself. Yep.
I'll remember that. And Kyle, you mentioned that you wouldn't be half the advocate that you were if it wasn't for the people that you were surrounded by.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly inspired by you guys, by this generation, by these incredible young voices. Who are some of the voices that inspire you to do what you do?
Well, I mean, Ayan and Ashley
Yeah.
are two of them.
There you go.
And I just spent the last couple of days at the Youth Mobilization Lab hosted by UNICEF, where we brought together advocates from all over the world. And just listening to them talk about the problems that they had so deftly identified in their communities and how big the solutions they had thought up and were implementing was like mind-boggling to me. And that was really inspirational. But I think like at the end of the day, the most inspirational voice are the youth that aren't up here talking, but the ones that are living with the consequences of a lot of the problems we're talking about. I'm most inspired by the child that is trying their best to learn in a school without chairs and with 4 textbooks for 150 kids, or the child that is walking a mile to get water for their family day in and day out. The way I see it, if they can persevere and try to thrive in the world that they're living in, then I better be able to do the advocacy work that I can
Problem is
do.
too big.
Yeah.
Well said. Ayan, what advice would you give other young people who don't know where to start? How can they use their voices in the way that you guys are?
Right, yeah. I think that's a really important question because a lot of youth, when trying to tackle the issues, that are just like so broad and
They feel
generalized.
so big.
Yeah, it's a lot, it's overwhelming. And I'd say to that it doesn't always have to be top, bottom.
Correct.
It can always be bottom up. Go to your individual communities and find, town halls, representatives, senators. There are people that, can affect change at the very local level. And I'd say like through the UNICEF Clubs program, that's a fantastic way to start advocacy in your own community, whether that be about mental health or education or immigration, like any of those issues you can do at an effective community level. So I'd strongly encourage to just look, call your local senator, your local representative, state or federal, and just have a conversation with them about how you feel and move forward through there. There are many resources, and it's not that you're alone. Youth across the world are trying to effect change. Just try to learn from them.
Absolutely. And this question is for all of you guys. I would love to know what we can do. How can we best support your advocacy? What do you need from adults, from policymakers, from businesses to support your generation?
Oh, me. I guess we can get started. Sophia, can we see how many policymakers and business
Yeah.
persons are in the audience? By show of hands? No one?
Policymakers, businessmen, businesswomen?
Okay. That's
Okay, it's a lot of people.
Right. So you know that we as young persons are often the ones that are supporting the businesses.
Right.
And then when we turn 18, we are often the ones who are voting to ensure that our futures are the #1 priority on persons' agenda. And personally, what I believe the business sector and policymakers need to do is to ensure that there's full transparency with us as young persons, accountability, ensure that when it comes to that, there are more paid internships for us as young persons and employability, ensuring that more young persons are given the access to technical capacity and training that is needed. But most importantly, when coming up with the solutions and ideas, we need to be meaningfully engaged within the decision-making spaces and to ensure that our futures are protected, and that is what needs to be done. Thank you.
Well, it was well said. I would just say, give us a chance. I feel like a lot of the times it's unclear exactly where a young person can go to get involved in this. And we're seeing how many policymakers and businessmen and women are in the crowd today and listening outside. Give young people a chance. You know, have internships for young people. Offer us jobs. Have us in the rooms where you're making these decisions. And I'm employing the word chance and not risk, because I don't think you'd be taking a risk by having us in these decision-making rooms. I really think if you allow young people into these spaces, you'll see that we have a lot to say, and for the most part, it's pretty good. And I also would say, and really emphasize, that it's not just having a young person in the room. We don't just want to be sitting there. We also want to have a voice that's recognized and feel like everything we're saying is actually being taken in and digested and implemented.
Agree.
Yeah, no, I think that question reminds me of something that the UNICEF executive director said in a meeting, I think 2-ish days ago, and she said that, you know, you cannot make policy or you cannot make change about us without us. And I want that to really strike, you know, the core of your minds, that if you are making policy about mental health, about education, about immigration, about all these issues, you have to understand that youth are fundamentally inheriting those policies, these solutions that you're implementing. And so it is critical that you do bring us a voice at the table and that you encourage us to speak on it. Because youth shouldn't be a checkbox where you have, you know, a youth at the table, they say a few things, a few words, and you don't consult on them again. I think what's critical is that we should try to incorporate youth across consistently with these policy issues. And I think, once again, like, I'll point to UNICEF. They know that, you know, we are the ones with the most at stake when it comes to these issues. So bringing a youth council, maybe, effective ways to consult youth is really the proper way to go about these things.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ashley, Kyle, and Ayan. Thank you for fearlessly using your voices and for lending your voice here for all of us today. And thank you all for your time. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.